Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere strange. The water's still, there's a thick breath of fog over everything. You're in the middle of a lake, and you're not quite sure how you got here, except maybe something in your algorithm decided you needed to learn about Aztec agriculture at 2:13 a.m., in which case, you're welcome. Out here, it's hard to see anything beyond a few feet in front of your face, but you do notice this odd swaying beneath you. It's not the lake where you're standing, it's like a raft, only it smells suspiciously like compost. Welcome to a floating garden. Yeah, you're standing on mud, sticks, maybe some ancient fish bones, and somehow, it's floating, and growing, and alive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, comment where you're listening from, and what time your body thinks it is. Time zones are fake anyway. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink slowly. The fog rolls off the water in thick curls like steam from a forgotten cup of tea. There's a smell, too not unpleasant, just earthy, like wet leaves after rain. Under your bare feet, the soil feels dense and cool. You wriggle your toes and realize you're not on a regular island. This thing moves. It sways with the water like a sleepy belly, and then it hits you. This isn't an island. It's a chinampa. It's okay, you probably didn't major in horticulture, but the Aztecs did. They built thousands of these artificial floating gardens on shallow lakes around Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City. Imagine a city built like Venice, only with more obsidian knives and fewer gondolas. You kneel down, scoop up a little dirt, and it's warm, like it remembers the sun. There's a root here, twining softly through the muck. The leaf it feeds glistens in the moonlight, dewy and healthy. This garden is not abandoned. Someone's been here recently. In the distance, a low watery croak from a frog bounces off the surface, then a rustle of reeds. It's like the garden is alive. Well, more alive than you'd like anything to be this close to your bare ankles. At night, you hear a boat, faintly, a slow paddle. It's the sound of someone not in a hurry. And you know what? You're not in a hurry either. You sit out here in the moonlight. The lake is a great sleeping mirror, and these gardens are its dreams. You're not floating on mud, you're floating on ambition. Because the Aztecs didn't build this for aesthetics. They built it to survive. Back in the 1300s, when they wandered into this soggy mess of a valley, it wasn't the paradise you're imagining. Picture a swamp, mosquitoes big enough to vote, and no flat ground anywhere. Most other tribes looked at the Valley of Mexico and said, nah. The Mexico future Aztecs looked at it and said, challenge accepted. There was a prophecy, too, of course, a sign from the gods. Something about an eagle eating a snake while sitting on a cactus. Very metal, but also extremely impractical real estate advice. And yet, here you are sitting on a floating island, they invented because regular farmland didn't exist. This particular patch of wet, wobbly real estate is maybe 30 feet wide and 200 feet long. Underneath, layers upon layers of woven reeds, mud, lake, sediment, and compost. The whole thing is anchored to the lake bed, with willow trees planted at the corners. The willows hold the shape like stitches on a bandage. You lay back on the ground. It's soft, a little too soft. You try not to think about what percentage of this thing might be ancient poop. See, the Aztecs were the original compost kings. Nothing organic went to waste. They were composting before it was cool or sanitary, but effective. Absolutely. The stars above you begin to sharpen in the sky, and one of them reflects in a puddle near your elbow. You reach out, it ripples. It's hard to imagine how these gardens were built at scale, but by the time the Spanish showed up uninvited, obviously there were over 20,000 acres of chinampas supporting a city of maybe 200,000 people. That's a lot of squash, a lot of beans, a lot of people not starving. And it didn't just grow food, it grew flowers. Giant marigolds, dahlias, even medicinal herbs that bloomed only at night. Midnight flowers. They were considered sacred and used in rituals, funerals, and sometimes weddings. The kind of blooms that didn't mind blooming under moonlight. Like goths, but make it agricultural. You notice something moving near your head. A beetle. Nope, just a worm. The size of a chopstick. It wriggles into the dirt and vanishes. You offer no resistance. Somehow this is calming. The wind sighs across the surface of the lake. The garden creaks. You sway slightly. Somewhere, someone sings a lullaby in Nahuatl voice from a dream. You close your eyes, and suddenly, you're drifting. You imagine what it must have been like in those early days. The Mexican scouts finding shallow banks, weaving together the first reed mats, shoveling up lakebed sludge to pile on top. It would have been thankless, filthy, back-breaking work, and yet they kept at it. Some say the very first chinampas failed, collapsed, sank. Historians still argue about that, but failure didn't stop them. They adjusted. They added more support, more willow anchors. They learned that layering dry material, like reeds and sticks beneath the muck, helped keep things aerated. That piling heavy volcanic soil on top gave structure. That plants with deep roots could hold it all together. You're starting to drift sideways. The fog curls up over your knees. Somewhere nearby, a water bird lets out a honk of surprise or indignation. Hard to tell with birds. You let your hand trail into the canal water. It's surprisingly warm. A small fish brushes past. Your eyes flutter. The Aztecs even had a word for these canals, a patli. They dug them out carefully between each so the water always had a way to move, and with it, canoes, silent ones, carrying seeds, produce, priests, gossip. You sit up again, slowly, and look around. The whole lake is speckled with floating gardens, some neat and rectangular, others crooked and strange, like someone tried to copy the blueprint in the dark. Each one is lit by tiny flame bowls set on poles. The firelight reflects in the water like stars scattered at your feet. Somewhere far off, a dog barks. You're not alone here. Not really. There are others, working late, tending crops, pulling weeds by moonlight, whispering to the plants. Maybe it helps them grow. Maybe it's just to pass the time. You lay back again. It's peaceful now. The kind of peace that only comes from human hands, shaping chaos into calm. And despite everything, the chaos always returns. But for now, for tonight, the mud holds, the garden floats, the sky hums. You smile, just barely, because now you know. The Aztecs built their paradise from the bottom up, with mud and stubbornness and a deeply unhinged work ethic, and somehow, it worked. So go ahead. Drift a little deeper. We've got a long night ahead. And in the next part, we're going to get our hands dirty, really dirty. But for now, stay still. The garden moves for you. You wake to the sound of squelching. It's not dramatic, no alarm bells, no jaguar screams, but it's enough to pull you gently out of your drifting haze. There's a slurp, a splash, and the rhythmic creak of wood. You blink open your eyes, and someone is pushing a canoe toward your garden with a long pole. They move like they've been doing this for years, which, judging by the lines on their sun-darkened hands, they probably have. The sun isn't quite up yet, but the sky has turned a tired gray. Like the face of someone who stayed up too late, watching historical YouTube videos. No judgment here among friends here. The canoe glides beside your floating bed, and you finally sit up fully. The garden beneath you rocks just a little, as if encouraging you. Time to get moving. Today's lesson: mud, sweat, and canoes, because that's what it took to make all of this. You stand, stretch, and follow the farmer across a narrow plank, bridge to another chinampa. This one's under construction. It's basically a floating compost, lasagna-thick layers of reeds, sedge, and lake muck, stacked like nature's most questionable sandwich. And right now, they're adding the mud. A pair of workers are standing knee-deep in the shallows, dragging basket-loads of black ooze from the lake bottom, with tools that look suspiciously like very ambitious spatulas. One of them pauses, wipes their forehead, and slaps another mosquito. The look they give the bug is deeply personal. You kneel at the edge, stick a finger into the mud. It's warm, slimy, smells like wet pennies and decayed dreams. You love it. This is tlaylatl, the secret source of chinampa construction. It's nutrient-rich sediment dredged from the lake, but absolutely essential for growing anything worth eating. But pulling it up isn't glamorous work. You can't just dip a ladle and call it a day. No, it takes time, technique, and a tolerance for being wet all the time. The two farmers scoop mud into baskets made of woven reeds, haul them onto the raft, and dump it out. The mound squelches and steams in the cool morning air. You ask, mostly with your eyebrows, how they keep the thing from sinking. One of them smiles, points to the edges of the garden. There, sticking out of the water like skeletal fingers, are rows of stakes-long wooden poles driven deep into the lake beat. They don't look like much, but they're the anchors holding everything in place. You step closer to one. The wood is smooth and dark. Willow, always willow. These trees were the Aztecs' MVPs, fast-growing, flexible, and with roots that loved the water. They planted them at the corners of every new chinampa, and as the willows grew, their roots wove themselves through the muck and sediment, literally, sowing the garden to the bottom of the lake. Nature doing the heavy lifting. Classic Aztec move. You wander down the side of the raft, mud squishing softly beneath your feet. A small flock of ducks paddles by, judging you silently. In the distance, you hear the low rhythmic slap of more canoes arriving. More mud, more reeds, more hands. It's a production line, but quieter. Nobody yells. Everyone just moves steady, practiced, like they've all done this before breakfast every day since childhood. You pause beside a half-finished chinampa. The central bed is high and wide, but the edges are still low. The water laps over them, threatening to breach. A man nearby gestures for you to help. He hands you a bundle of reeds still damp from cutting end. You begin weaving. The reeds go down like fencing along the border. This creates the first retaining wall, helping trap the mud inside the frame. You're not exactly good at it. Your weave is crooked, loose, and definitely wouldn't impress anyone's grandmother. But no one says a word. The man just chuckles softly and tightens your work with a few practiced knots. As you work, he explains not with words, but with gestures that these gardens need maintenance constantly. They don't just float and stay perfect. They rise and sag. They grow heavy with rain. If the water levels drop too low in the dry season, the chinampa can run aground. If the rains come too fast, they can sink. So they patch, add more mud, more reeds. Like keeping a ship afloat by bailing and rebuilding the hull at the same time. A woman walks past carrying a stack of saplings, not flowers, trees. She jabs them into the corners of the new raft, one by one. Willows again. You realize she's planting anchors for the next season, for a future garden. One she might not even farm herself. Forward thinking in mud and wood. You sit again, take a breath, and watch as the sun begins to rise, a lazy, golden yolk breaking over the jagged ridges of the Sierra Madre. Light hits the water and the fog begins to burn away, revealing the bigger picture. Hundreds of chinampas, maybe thousands, like strange green puzzle pieces, floating on a liquid mirror. Long canals snake between them, crisscrossed with tiny bridges and hidden paths. And on every garden, life, corn, squash, beans, amaranth. You spot someone picking tomatoes so red, they practically glow. Someone else is chasing a chicken. The chicken is winning. It's beautiful, and absurd, and brilliant. Because again, the Aztecs didn't start here with lush farmland. This was a logistical nightmare. Too much water, too little solid ground. And yet, they didn't wait for conditions to improve. They made the conditions. And they didn't stop. Every chinampa was made by hand, hauled, layered, planted, maintained for generations. There are records of some plots staying in the same families for centuries, passed down like heirlooms made of mud and love. You wonder what your great-great-grandkid would think if you left them a damp garden that needed rebuilding every year. Actually, you wonder if you have enough upper body strength to rebuild one yourself. Spoiler, you don't, but good try. A sudden breeze stirs the willows. The leaves shimmer and whisper, the kind of whisper that might say, "Don't forget." The compost, if you listen hard enough. The man beside you nudges your shoulder and offers a piece of roasted maize. You accept it. It's warm, earthy, slightly smoky, possibly the most delicious thing you've ever eaten while standing on floating vegetables. As you chew, he gestures around him, then points to your feet. You look down. Your weavier, messy, amateur attempt at building has already started to settle. The mud has oozed into the spaces, locking the reeds into place. The lake water has accepted it. The chinampa welcomes your effort, even if it wasn't perfect. That's kind of nice. You finish the maize, brush the crumbs off your lap, and stretch. Again the sun is rising higher now, glinting off the canal water, turning the whole world a warm gold. You yawn. All that mud moving really takes it out of you. You lie down on the edge of the raft, careful to avoid the fresh muck. Someone places a woven mat under your head. You nod, grateful. As your eyes begin to close, you hear the soft splash of more canoes arriving. The work continues, but not for you. Not tonight. Tonight, you've done your share. Tomorrow, well, tomorrow's lake might not behave quite so nicely. And the Aztecs, they had a solution for that too. But we'll talk about that, in the next drift. For now, let the willow trees rock you gently. The garden holds, the mud listens, and the morning sighs around you like a lullaby. Ask ChatGPT. You dream of water that moves sideways. When you open your eyes again, everything is blue lake, sky, even the faint shimmer on the underside of the clouds. But something's off. The water's higher. You sit up slowly, and the first thing you notice is your feet are wet. Not damp, wet. The woven mat beneath you is floating now, like a lily pad that lost its flower. You blink twice and look around. Everywhere, the chinampas are drowning. It's subtle at first, just a little overflow on the edges, a few tomato plants listing lazily into the canal. But the more you look, the more you see it. Water creeping over the gardens, workers rushing, canoes zipping through narrow gaps like ambulances in a leafy emergency. You scramble to your feet, sloshing, slipping. This garden isn't sinking, it's being swallowed. Welcome to Lake Texcoco, the body of water that never quite agreed to be tamed. Despite all their cleverness, the Aztecs still had to deal with a basic problem. Water goes where it wants, especially when it's sitting in a giant closed basin ringed by mountains, with nowhere to drain but straight into your business. The Valley of Mexico was a hydraulic chaos engine. Rain would come hard in the wet season, pooling into brackish lagoons and freshwater lakes like overfilled bathtubs. Lake Texcoco sat at the center of it, all shallow, saline, and moody. Its levels could rise feet overnight. It would burst its banks for no reason at all, as if to say, this is why we don't build empires on me. And yet, they did. You follow a man running across a sagging boardwalk. He points to a garden half submerged and barks something sharp. A group of farmers scramble to pile more reeds along the edge, building a makeshift levee. One woman dives headfirst into the canal, comes up sputtering, and begins yanking at a willow branch that's come loose. They don't panic, they patch. This isn't the first time the lake has acted up. Won't be the last. You jump in to help or at least splash enthusiastically while pretending to be helpful. You drag a bundle of reeds toward a weak point and try your best to wedge them into the rising mud. They nod at you. That's good enough. You notice one of the canoes isn't hauling produce or tools. It's filled with rocks, big ones. Two men unload them and drop them one by one at the chinampa's edge. They vanish into the water with satisfying bloops. Weight. Structure. That's how you fight water with land. You make your land heavier than the lake wants it to be. The raft groans beneath your knees, but doesn't give. You glance across the water and notice something else. Long rows of stakes driven into the canals in a wide V shape. These are albarradas, defensive dikes the Aztecs built to break the force of incoming water. Think of them like speed bumps for waves, or maybe the world's oldest pool noodles, but made of trees and willpower. There's also the Atoyatl stone-lined ditches built around some chinampas like moats. These let excess water drain into canals before it could drown the crops. You spot one now, gurgling quietly, doing its job. It's not glamorous, but it's brilliant. The truth is, the Aztecs weren't just gardeners, they were hydraulic engineers. They carved control into chaos using dirt, rock, and the occasional sacrificial ceremony. No one's bleeding here today, thankfully, just a lot of sweat and mud in places you'd rather not discuss. You sit back down as the emergency patching slows. The garden is still half underwater, but stable. Most of the crops will survive. The rest, compost. You notice a boy beside you, maybe 10 years old, holding a small clay bowl. He offers it to you. You sniff it cautiously. Water, but not just any. Water amalaltic, collected rainwater, filtered through sand and charcoal. One of the few drinks here that won't give you regrettable memories. You sip. It's cool, clean, almost sweet. The boy smiles shyly, then points out across the lake. There, in the distance, rising from the shallows like a stubborn spine, is a long wall, a causeway. No more than that the dike of Nezahualcóyotl. You squint. It's a raised barrier of stone and earth, over 10 miles long, separating the freshwater part of the lake from the salty section. One of the biggest public works the valley ever saw, and still barely mentioned in textbooks. Classic Nezahualcóyotl wasn't just a poet king with excellent hair. He was the guy who said, hey, let's control the entire lake with this one giant wall, and somehow, He pulled it off, it, diverted flooding, preserved freshwater, protected chinampas, and made him a legend. Historians still argue whether the dike was fully effective year-round. Some say it collapsed often. Others insist it saved entire harvests. The truth, probably both. That's how big, muddy dreams usually go. But one thing's certain, without the dike, the floating gardens wouldn't have stood a chance. You nod slowly, then glance down. Your feet are drying. The water's receding. Someone upstream opened a sluice gate, or maybe the wind shifted, or maybe the lake just got bored. Either way, the worst seems to be over for now. You lie back again, letting your soaked clothes cling to you like swamp pajamas. The sun is fully out now, turning the water silver, too bright to stare at. You cover your eyes and breathe. Somewhere nearby, someone's whistling. A calm tune. Could be a farming song, could be a lullaby, could just be their version of a podcast. You close your eyes and listen. And as you drift, you wonder how many generations fought this same battle. Against water, against collapse, against gravity itself. And yet, they stayed. They built, rebuilt, patched, prayed, hauled rocks, drove willows into muck, and whispered to a lake that never truly listened. And still, they fed a city. Your rocks gently beneath you, like a cradle carved from compost and spite. The next time someone tells you Aztec agriculture was just mud and sticks, you'll smile, because now you know some of the strongest things ever built were meant to float. Next time, we're getting into something even weirder. You ever fertilized an entire garden with garbage? No, just wait. For now, let the lake sigh around you and sleep, if you want. The worst has passed, and the worms are grateful. You're not sure what wakes you. It might be the smell. Not bad, exactly, just distinctive, like wet compost, fresh mushrooms, and something slightly roasted. Kind of like a farmer's market that fell into a swamp and decided to reinvent itself as a spa. You peel open your eyes. It's still morning, but the light has that late spring haze to its soft, dusty gold filtering through thin cloud. Somewhere, water drips lazily. A frog belches its opinion. You stretch and sit up, expecting silence. Instead, you hear sloshing, purposeful sloshing. You turn. A man with impressive calf muscles is dragging a boat up onto a chinampa. It's overflowing with buckets. Nope, not buckets. Clay pots. Lots of them. Some are sealed with thick plugs of beeswax. Others are just open and steaming gently in the morning sun. You catch a whiff from the nearest one. It smells like burnt honey and boiled sadness. Welcome to the Aztec waste management system. You were warned. The man nods to you, then picks up one of the open pots and pours it directly into a furrow between rows of maize plants. The liquid spreads slowly, dark and rich. The maize doesn't flinch. You do, because yes, you're watching someone fertilize their vegetables with human waste. Now, take a breath. It's okay. It's called tlazolia, Nahuatl term that basically means refuse, trash, or stuff we don't want to think about. But for the Aztecs, trash was treasure. They didn't just discard organic waste, they reimagined it as sacred fuel for life. And that includes the less glamorous parts of life. You follow the man as he moves down the row, and he starts talking. His Nahuatl is smooth, rhythmic. You can't understand much, but he gestures enough to tell you the basics. Everything has a cycle. What feeds you today might become food for your plants tomorrow. He grins. It's a little too proud, honestly. You try not to think about what part of that tomato came from someone else's Tuesday dinner. The Aztecs were masters of closed-loop systems. Leftover food scraps, ashes, bones, even all of it went into the compost mix. But they took it a step further. Public latrines in the city of Tenochtitlan were cleaned regularly, and waste was collected, dried, and distributed to chinampa farmers. Yes, they had a poop delivery service, and you thought your mail was weird. You pause by one of the smaller garden plots. The soil here is almost black, rich, crumbly. You sink your fingers into it and feel a slight warmth decomposition at work. Below the surface, tiny insects are having the time of their lives. A centipede skitters away like it has a meeting. You lean back, oddly satisfied. Look, it's easy to joke about Aztec fertilizer, but this was biotechnology centuries ahead of its time. They understood microbiomes before there was a word for it. They weren't squeamish because they didn't have the luxury to be, and because of that, Their gardens bloomed like magic. In fact, they grew so much food that chinampas could yield up to 7 crops per year in rotation. Corn, beans, squash, chilies, herbs, even exotic flowers, fed by the quiet alchemy of decomposition. You stand and wander toward the next plot. A woman is kneeling there, crumbling dry, flaky material into her soil. You peeked closer. It's Texcoco, the powdered bark of a healing tree, mixed with ash and crushed bone. It's antiseptic, protective. She sprinkles it like she's seasoning a soup. Each farmer has their mix. Some blend in fish guts, others use fermented duck droppings. You try not to think about how they discovered that, but every recipe is personal. A signature, a compost fingerprint. You ask using awkward pantomime how she knows what works. She smiles, then points to the plants. That's the test. Do they stand tall? Are their leaves wide? Do they whisper when the wind passes? If yes, then you're doing something right. You sit beside her, watching her fingers move with quiet precision. She hums to herself. The song has no beginning or end. Like the garden. Behind you, the man with the clay pots finishes his route. He loads the empty jars and begins paddling back down the canal, probably to refill them. You nod in admiration. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear sandals and handle other people's poop with grace. There's a pile of chapulines fried grasshoppers on a nearby cloth. You crunch one thoughtfully, salty, smoky, still better than 90% of airplane snacks. You lie down again, head resting on a bag of dried maize husks. The smell of compost clings to the breeze, earthy and ancient, and you can't help thinking, this place isn't just sustainable, it's sustainable by necessity. Because when you live in the middle of a swamp-like hybrid, surrounded by enemies, subject to surprise floods and random droughts, you don't have time for waste. You make everything count, even the gross stuff, especially the gross stuff. A bird lands on a nearby stake and tilts its head at you, as if to say, now you get it, and you do. You close your eyes and let the scent of soil and sulfur lull you back toward sleep. Tomorrow, there'll be flowers. But tonight, you honor the unsung heroes of Aztec gardening, the worms, the rot, and the gloriously repurposed. Rest well. The compost is warm, and the garden is still listening. Ask ChatGPT. You wake to laughter. Not loud, not rowdy, just continuous. A soft ripple of chuckles weaving through the canals like dragonflies at dawn. You blink up at a sky still kissed with pink, and somewhere above the willows, birds are losing their minds over the sun again. Honestly, it's a bit much for this hour. You roll onto your side and nearly fall into a canoe. There are 3 women in it, hunched together like a trio of secrets, their boat piled high with baskets. Wicker overflows with herbs, with little bundles of maize, a stack of squash arranged like polite cannonballs, and flowers. Or the flowers, orange, yellow, white, deep crimson blooms, so bright they could power a flashlight. They spill out of the baskets like they're trying to escape. Some you recognize, marigolds, dahlias, snapdragons. Others feel like they were invented just for this lake, just for this hour. Their petals look soft enough to sleep in, and that's when you realize this isn't farming anymore, it's market day. The chinampa beside you is already empty. You scramble to your feet and follow the current of motion. Canoes float past you in single file, quiet as breath. Children crouch in the front, holding little jars of salt or painted gourds of honey. A man rows by with nothing but soap, his whole boat filled with smooth white blocks that smell like ash and aloe. Everywhere, movement, and none of it chaotic. This is the floating market of Texcoco. You hop into an empty skiff. Don't worry. No one stops you and begin paddling. Along the canal, the trees thin, the water widens. Then, just as you pass a bend framed by lily pads the size of wagon wheels, it opens up. There it is. Not just a market, a floating city of trade. Boats bump gently along wide wooden docks. Platform after platform of temporary stalls stretches over the water like a quilt of baskets and sails. Flags flutter, birds circle. People move from one canoe to another, bartering, laughing, waving. You see piles of obsidian knives, pyramids of chilies, cloth dyed a blue so deep it makes your brain hurt. But the flowers ... they're everywhere, strung on cords between stalls, floating in bowls of water, woven into headbands, used to mark stall corners, offered in bundles, petals tight and fresh, some still wrapped in morning dew. You drift closer, and someone shoves a garland into your hands. It smells of marigolds and mint. The seller grins at you, gesturing at your wild bedhead and muddy tunic. They say something in Nahuatl that probably translates to, "You need this more than anyone." You do not argue. The Aztecs didn't just grow flowers for aesthetics. Each had a use. Sempolcacatl, the marigold, was for honoring the dead. Its smell was believed to guide spirits back to the living during Michaelhuatl, the festival of the little dead. You might know it now as Dia de los Muertos, but this was the seed from which that bloom grew. Then there's Xochitlcuitlaxtli, the fire-petaled bloom only used in royal rituals, and Temple Nahuatl, a strange vine that only flowers at night, which some farmers say glows faintly under a new moon. A few historians claim that one flower grown on these chinampas, the midnight bloom, was used to make a paste that numbed pain during surgery. Others think it was used to dye ceremonial robes worn by priests. Still others say it never existed. Historians still argue about that. But if you ask the old ladies on the back of the flower canoes, they'll just nod and whisper, "It grows when it's ready." You find yourself drawn toward one of the larger docks. It's packed shoulder to shoulder with traders from all over the empire. You see Maya speakers arguing about cacao prices. A tall, stone-faced warrior is balancing bundles of feathers dyed purple. A tiny girl holds up a beetle cage filled with shiny bugs like living jewelry. And in the center of it all, a priest. He wears a robe stitched with flower petals, so fresh they still drip. His head is circled with a live wreath of orchids and smoke. He's buying nothing. He's simply watching. You lock eyes for a moment, and suddenly, the laughter fades. The whole market, though still humming, seems distant, like you're hearing it through cloth. Because behind all this beauty, these petals, perfumes, garlands, gifts, there's something older, something sacred. Flowers weren't just decoration, they were currency of the soul. To offer someone a flower wasn't small talk, it was reverence. In war, soldiers were told to die in the field of flowers, a metaphor for dying with honor. In love, bouquets were wrapped in prayers. In death, petals lined the path to the afterworld. You lower your garland, just slightly, and then, a child sneezes, and the spell breaks. The market roars back into full sound. Someone throws a fruit and misses. A canoe knocks into another. Your own boat gently spins in a lazy circle, guided by nothing but breeze and boredom. You smile. You buy a pouch of dried petals just because. You eat something green and spicy off a stick and regret nothing. You accept another garland. This one smells of nightshade and cinnamon. You don't even care, because somehow, this chaotic garden economy, this fragrant chaos of boats and blooms, works, and you realize something beautiful. The chinampas don't just feed mouths. They feed memory. They feed color. They feed ceremony. They are, quite literally, floating testaments to human stubbornness and human softness, the part of us that wants to survive and to smell good while doing it. You paddle away slowly as the sun climbs higher, boats still buzzing around you like bees in a hive. The air is thick with scent and song, and you whisper, quietly, to no one, "Let me remember this when I wake." You will and tomorrow will meet the flower that blooms for no one living. But for now, breathe deep. The blossoms are watching. You wake in darkness, not the star-sprinkled, cozy kind from earlier, but real, heavy black, the kind of dark where you can't tell the sky from the lake, and the only light comes from memory. You sit up slowly, aware of a hush, not silence exactly, but a reverent stillness. Even the frogs seem to be whispering. The air is thick with the scent of smoke, citrus, and something else, something floral, but bittersweet. You're still on the but now the plants around you are different, tired and stranger. You reach out and touch a stalk, firm, sturdy. A soft bloom unfurls under your fingers like a sigh. It's warm, almost alive. These are Cempasúchil Aztec marigolds, the flower of 20 petals, and tonight they're blooming for the dead, because tonight is Michaelhuatl, the little feast of the little dead. You look around. Candles float on the canal like stars that lost their sky. They drift past slowly, each one cradled in a folded leaf boat. Some are ringed with flower petals, some carry tiny clay figurines, some hold nothing at all, just flickering light. You see people moving among the gardens, quiet, careful, laying out food offerings, tamales, honey cakes, chocolate, drinks thick enough to stand a spoon in. No one eats. This isn't for the living. This is for the ones who left. The Aztecs believed death wasn't the end, not really. There were levels, destinations, Mictlan, for the ordinary dead, Tlalocan for those who drowned, Tonetiucan, the sun's paradise, for fallen warriors. Even babies had their own afterlife, Chichihuacuco, the tree-filled place of eternal milk. Yes, really, and once a year. The veil between those places and this world got thin, so thin you could feel it in your bones. And you do. Right now. Someone hands you a bundle of herbs, copal burned for purification. You hold it. It smells like pine and old stories. A woman dips her fingers into a bowl of marigold paste and draws a spiral on your forehead. You ask what it means. She says, so they know who you are. The dead, she means. You nod, like that makes perfect sense. A low hum starts somewhere, one voice, then another. A chant in Nahuatl rises like mist. Not mournful, just welcoming. These are Ixocamilca flowers, the place of the flower field. That's what this region was called before the Spanish tried to rename it, Ixocamilco. You're drifting through it now, slowly. The water carries your boat without effort. Around you, other canoes pass full of flowers, candles, and sugar skulls. A dog rides one of them. His eyes meet yours. If you know, you know. You pass an altar on a garden bank. It's woven entirely from reeds and flower stems. On it, a painted skull, some incense, and an obsidian mirror. You catch a glimpse of yourself, just barely. You look older. The marigolds seem to glow. Not from any light, just from themselves. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Marigolds don't bloom like this anywhere else. Not the way they do here. Not this full, this fast, this fierce. Botanists say it's the soil, the water, the elevation. But old farmers, they say it's the souls, that the dead come back through the flowers. That's why they bloom all at once. Like a memory exhaling. Some marigolds bloom only at night. That's a real thing. Tagit. Nobody knows exactly how the Aztecs bred it, just that it opens its petals after sunset and closes them at dawn. Which, you have to admit, is extremely on brand for a flower used in funerals. You pass another chinampa, this one lit entirely by candle bowls. A woman sits in the middle, eyes closed, hands full of flower heads. She murmurs names, one by one, like laying breadcrumbs across the lake, for them to follow. Some say the wind that night smells different, like old rain and warm bread. Some say you can hear footsteps behind you, soft, bare, careful. Some say the flowers open wider when someone is near. Historians still argue about whether the Aztecs believed the dead really walked back or if it was all symbolic. But standing here, it doesn't feel like metaphor. You think of your own memories, faces that don't show up in dreams as often anymore, voices fading into static. You whisper a name into the air just to see. No one answers, but a breeze lifts the edge of your shawl. That's enough. You land on a small dock. The canoe rocks gently behind you. A man with a shaved head and a robe of flower petals guides you toward a circle of candles. At the center, an offering, a mound of amaranth, a bowl of pulque, a little jade carving. You sit, he sits, no one speaks, and in the silence, you feel it, the lake breathing around you, the gardens holding their breath, the marigolds pulsing with unseen light. You wonder how many years this has been happening. Hundreds, thousands. How many generations grew these flowers, not just for food or beauty, but as a way home? Because that's what they are. Not decorations, beacons, little, bright, fragrant signs that say, come back, we're still here, we remember. And then you hear footsteps. Behind you, soft, bare, careful you don't turn. You just close your eyes. The flower in your lap has opened fully, and the garden hums with the weight of memory. Let it hold you, let it guide you. Sleep now, if you can. The dead walk gently. And the chinampa rocks slow. You wake to the sound of a shovel hitting stone. Clink, pause, clink again. It's rhythmic, but slow, like whoever's digging has no real urgency, just determination. You roll over and squint into the light. The sun's already high, blazing, and unapologetic, painting everything in gold and sweat. Around you, rows of maize stalks sway lazily, their silks whispering in the breeze like they're gossiping behind your back. But it's not the sun or the corn that catches your eye, it's the man. His older gray hair tied back in a neat braid, skin darkened by years of sun and wind, eyes sharp as obsidian. He moves like someone who stopped being surprised. A long time ago, his name, someone whispers, is cutely. You don't ask who he is. You just know, he's one of them. The garden keepers. You watch as he digs a narrow trench between two beds. Not for irrigation. He's not a beginner. No, this is something else. A channel, maybe. A foundation line. The shovel clinks again. He stops, stretches, wipes his brow, then walks to a canoe parked just offshore. It's loaded with basket seed, tools, dried fish skins, and little clay tablets carved with glyphs. He carries one back, places it in the trench, and covers it with soil. A blessing, a foundation stone, a promise. You step closer. Cutely doesn't speak, just gestures. Come, here. You obey. He hands you a tool. It's not quite a shovel, not quite a hoe, somewhere between a stick and a commandment. You begin digging alongside him. He nods, and so begins your apprenticeship. Cutely has tended this chinampa since he was a boy. 40 years on this single patch of floating earth. Never once did he leave the lake for more than a day. He says in the quiet, broken Spanish he uses when you finally coax words from him that he doesn't need to leave. The garden is a whole world. It feeds me, it listens, it argues sometimes, but it always forgives. You believe him. You see it in the way he moves, how his feet always find the firmest part of the soil, how he listens to the wind like it's telling him which crops are thirsty. His hands smell like roots and memory, and the chinampa, it knows him. You swear that rows straighten themselves as he walks by. Under Cutely's guidance, you plant milpa, the sacred trio, maize, beans, and squash. Each one helps the others grow. Corn rises tall and fast. Beans climb its stalks. Squash shades the ground, keeping moisture in and weeds out. It's not just planting, it's choreography. By noon you're drenched in sweat, skin itching from sun and lake dust. You try to rest in the shadow of a willow. Cutely doesn't stop. He sharpens a tool with a strip of obsidian, then fixes a fence made of reed slats and twine. You ask him why. He shrugs. The ducks. You don't ask again. Later, you help him prune chia plants. Their leaves smell sweet, almost minty. He crushes one in his palm, inhales deeply, and hands it to you. You'll sleep better tonight. You believe that too. As the sun begins to dip, casting long shadows over the water, Cutely finally sits. He eats a simple meal, corn cakes, roasted chili, a dried fish, so tough you suspect it's also a weapon. He breaks the cake in half, hands you one. It tastes like ash, salt, and sincerity. Around you, other chinampas begin to quiet. Canoes return home. Chickens nestle under benches. Someone plays a flute in the distance, a soft tune that loops on itself like a lazy spiral. You ask Cutely if he ever wanted something else, a bigger garden, more land, a house in the city. He chews slowly, then says, if I feed 50 people, that is enough. If I feed 100, I ask for help. If I feed 500, I ask for silence. You blink. Silence, you ask. He nods. The land is not loud. You have to be quiet to hear what it needs. You stare at him for a moment, unsure whether that's the wisest thing you've ever heard, or just a poetic way to avoid city. Taxes may be both. That night, you don't sleep in your usual spot. Cutely lets you stay under his shelter, a simple woven roof, held up by 4 crooked poles. You lie on a mat made of agave fiber, the edges fraying like an old book. He tucks a bundle of dried epazote under your mat. It keeps the mosquitoes away. You're not sure if that's a fact or a superstition. Either way, you're grateful. As you close your eyes, you hear him whispering, not to you, to the garden. You catch only bits, a name, a number, a season, a kind of corn that didn't. Listen well this year. He's not praying. He's talking to the land like an old friend, one who misbehaves sometimes, but always comes back. You drift off, lulled by the creak of water, the scent of soil, the slow breath of the chinampa beneath you. And somewhere between waking and dreaming, you realize Cutely isn't just a farmer. He's a historian, a caretaker of living memory, one who writes with roots and reads with calloused hands. Tomorrow, he'll show you the dances they used to do when the rain stopped coming. But tonight, let the garden speak. It only needs one listener. And tonight, that's you. Ask ChatGPT. The sky is cracked open. You hear it before you feel it, a low, metallic rumble, like a drum being played slowly by a god with too much time on his hands. Then comes the silence, long, suspicious, followed by the faintest plip of a raindrop hitting a leaf, then another, then everything. The rain comes down like a curtain pulled across the world, hard, heavy, relentless. Within moments, the chinampa is slick, shining, alive with puddles. You're soaked before you even sit up, blinking against the warm drops that patter into your eyes like enthusiastic ants. Cutely doesn't flinch. He's already outside, arms raised slightly, like he's being measured for a robe made entirely of water. His eyes are closed, his mouth moves. Not in prayer, more like in conversation. You crawl out from under the shelter and squish your way to him. He grins. Finally, he says, "They listened." You don't ask who they are. Not yet. Instead, you follow him as he walks through the downpour, checking the water level in the canals. He uses a stick marked with notches, each one representing a different god, a different year, a different disaster avoided. The water is halfway to the notch marked with a spiral and a fish. Apparently, that's good. Then he pulls out something strange, a carved wooden mask. It's painted with streaks of blue and red, feathers sprouting from its top like confused antennae. He hands it to you. "Put it on," he says. "Time to dance." And just like that, you're in it. The rain dance. It's not the one you think it is. No dramatic stomping, no movie-style twirls. It's simple, measured, a shuffle, a turn, a gentle slap of foot to wet earth. Cutely shows you the steps: heel, toe, pivot, bow. The bow is for Tlaloc, the god of rain. He has goggle eyes and fangs, and a personality like a wet sponge with anger issues. You repeat the steps, slowly, carefully. The water seeps into your sandals, and your soaked tunic clings to you like a needy relative. But you keep going. The garden moves with you. Around the chinampa, others join in. Silent figures emerging from shelters, huts, the shadows of canoes. They form a circle. No one speaks. The only sound is the splash of bare feet on flooded earth. This isn't performance, it's negotiation. Because sometimes the rains come too hard, sometimes they come too late, and sometimes they forget to come at all. The Aztecs were no strangers to drought. Entire seasons could pass without a single drop. Crops would shrivel, canals would dry, and the chinampas, those beautiful floating gardens, would harden, crack, and sink. That's when the dances started. To ask, to plead, to bargain. You've read that Tlaloc demanded child sacrifice, that his temples were stained with tears and blood, that he could flood an empire or dry it out like a raisin if he didn't get what he wanted. But here, on this chinampa, the offering is gentler. It's sweat, it's rhythm, it's remembering the old moves so the gods don't feel forgotten. The rain begins to slow, not stop, just soften. From hammer to drumstick, from roar to hush. Cutely grunts. He's listening. You nod, breathless. You remove the mask. It's heavier than it looks. Inside, it smells like wood smoke and old stories. Around you, the chinampa has changed. The crops shine. Water clings to every leaf like jewelry. A frog hops across the path, entirely unbothered by the human rituals it just witnessed. Somewhere nearby, a fish breaks the surface of the canal with a plop so dramatic you're almost sure it was intentional. Cutely sits on a stump, breathing slowly. You sit beside him. "So," you say, catching your breath. "You think that worked?" He shrugs. "You're wet. That's something." And it is. Because it's not just about getting rain. It's about being in it. About remembering you're part of the cycle. That without water, the soil forgets how to be soil. The seeds forget how to speak. The garden forgets how to breathe. You think about modern droughts of cracked earth and endless sprinklers and articles about climate catastrophe. And then you think of this, of dancing, of humility, of getting so soaked the water becomes part of you. Cutely pulls a small gourd from under his tunic. He opens it. Inside, pulque milky, fermented, slightly sour. He hands it to you. "Too. The rain," he says. You drink. It tastes like lightning and patience. As evening settles in, the rain stops completely. The clouds peel away, revealing a bruised purple sky. Stars blink uncertainly, like they forgot their lines. The chinampa steams. The earth sighs. You lie on your back, arms spread, clothes still damp. You're not cold, you're rooted. Tomorrow, the canals will teem with fish again, and so will the gardens with frogs, flowers, and vines that grow faster than you can track. But tonight, let the mud cling to you. Let the gods decide if you danced well enough. You did. They're just not always great at compliments. Ask ChatGPT. You wake to croaking, not poetic croaking, not gentle frog lullabies. No, this is aggressive, unapologetic, amphibian shouting. One of them somewhere very close is definitely auditioning for lead vocalist of a punk band. You blink groggily, roll onto your side, and immediately flinch. Something slimy just darted past your arm. You sit up fast, heart thudding, and there it is. A frog, large, unblinking, possibly judging you. You're not alone. A few more hop lazily around the garden bed, some lounging in shallow puddles, others, half buried in mud like they own the place. One is sitting very still on top of a tomato. You're beginning to realize something. This chinampa isn't just a garden, it's a pond. You stand up carefully and tiptoe through the rows, trying not to step on any living things, which is hard, because everything here is alive. The soil wriggles with worms, the canals bubble, even the stalks seem to hum. You kneel by the edge of the water, and that's when you see fish, dozens of them, tiny silver darts flickering just below the surface. They move in lazy spirals, sometimes pausing as if they, too, are admiring the view. Then you notice something else. The fish are inside the chinampa, that is, within its borders. Small channels have been cut between beds, flooded furrows become pools, and the pools teem with life. Welcome to the part they forgot to teach you in school. Aztec chinampas weren't just farms, they were ecosystems. You trail your fingers through the water, a tilapia bumps your knuckle. Somewhere nearby, a turtle plops off a log, cutely appears, barefoot as always, holding a woven basket full of what looks like snacks. Breakfast, he says, handing you a warm corn cake. You chew. It's sweet, a little nutty. He gestures to the water. Frogs eat bugs. Fish eat mosquito larvae. Birds eat frogs. We eat fish, sometimes birds. He grins. You nod slowly. And the bugs, they eat us when we sleep. Fair enough. He hands you a reed fishing spear. The tip is split like a trident and bound with twine. He walks to the water, waits some more. Then snap, he strikes. The spear comes up twitching. A small fish flails for a moment, then calms, cutely removes it gently, and tosses it into a clay pot at his feet. You try, you fail, repeatedly. Eventually, a fish swims into your leg and just stays there. You scoop it up with your hands like a confused toddler catching soap. Cutely doesn't laugh, but his eyes do. You sit on the edge of the chinampa and watch the water. Every inch of this space works together. The waste from the fish, fertilizer for the plants. The shade from the squash leaves keeps the water cool. The frogs, insect control. And everything feeds into everything else, over and over again. It's not just sustainable, it's elegant. You remember those school posters with cartoon ecosystems, trees, and rabbits and clouds with arrows everywhere. This is that, only real, and it smells like mint and mud, instead of dry erase marker. You wander deeper into the chinampa, stepping carefully across a small bridge made of tied reeds. On the other side, a tiny hut. Inside, hanging from the ceiling, are bundles of dried fish. They sway slightly in the breeze. Tails stiff. Cutely steps in and grabs one. Used to trade this, he says, for fish for one bowl of chili. He points to a small, shriveled frog carcass hanging beside the fish. That one was for medicine. You blink. For what? He grins. Bad dreams. You dry it, grind it, mix with cacao and honey. Only a little. Or he shrugs. You have worse dreams. You decide to leave the frog alone. Outside, the sun is climbing. The frogs return to their mud puddles. You notice now how each chinampa seems to host its own flavor of microlife. Some have more dragonflies. Some are covered in bees. Some buzz faintly with hummingbirds that hover like tiny, furious guardians. And through it all, the canals wind like arteries, bloodlines, life pathways. The Aztecs understood that if you build with nature, not against it, you don't have to fight so hard. The frogs protect the crops. The fish feed the people. The birds bring seeds from faraway places. The humans just keep the balance. It's like jazz, muddy, squishy jazz. Historians still argue whether the chinampas were deliberately built to encourage this level of biodiversity, or if it just happened. But one thing's certain, it worked. You watch as a hawk swoops low over the water, snatches a fish, then disappears into the treetops. No ceremony, no thanks, Just cycle. Cutely offers you a bowl of roasted frog legs. You hesitate. He shrugs. Good protein. You take one. It's salty, crispy, a little chewy, not bad. You lie down in the shade of a banana plant's stomach, full, face, warm, and think to yourself, this is genius. Not industrial genius. Not concrete and steel kind of genius. The kind that grows, that breathes, that sings in frog croaks and buzzes in insect wings. Tomorrow, the vines will move again. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see them do something a little unnatural. But for now, sleep. The frogs are on duty. And the fish don't mind your snoring. Ask ChatGPT. You wake to rustling, not wind, not water. This is something else. You open your eyes and it's still dark midnight. Maybe later. The moon is thin, a silver eyelash stretched across the sky. But you see movement, not people, not animals, plants, specifically, vines. One slithers past your ankle like it's on a mission. Another curls delicately up a fence post. A third has made it halfway across the canoe you slept beside. You sit up slowly silent, and squint at the chinampa around you. It's alive. Okay, it's always been alive. But this is different. This is movement, intent. The squash vines are inching their way toward the water. The beans are curling around tomato stakes like sleepy snakes. Even the morning glories are turning, repositioning themselves like they're preparing for a performance. Welcome to the night of the crawling vines. You're not hallucinating. Probably cutely emerges from the shadows. Completely He's holding a small jar of some sort of flower salve, which he casually dabs under his nose like it's mosquito repellent. He sees your expression and chuckles. They do this sometimes, he says, when it's humid, when the moon is polite. You watch a tendril loop around the corner of your mat. Is it dangerous? He shrugs. Only if you sleep in one spot too long. You're not sure if he's joking, probably. You follow him along the edge of the chinampa. He walks barefoot through the rows, gently redirecting overzealous vines, untangling leaves that have wrapped around each other like sleepy toddlers. It's like plant babysitting. You ask him what causes it. He says, warm nights, wet roots, full bellies. Same reason people dance. And then you see it. The far corner of the chinampa, a patch of squash. Dozens of vines now have grown onto the nearby canoe. They've wrapped around the frame, up the pole, even tangled themselves into the oars. You point. What happens when they reach the boat? He grins. It becomes part of the garden. And that's not a metaphor. You watch as the vines slowly anchor the canoe to the chinampa, curling into its joints like roots. They're not just moving, they're expanding, claiming, growing wherever the warmth and moisture allow. You reach down and touch one of the vines. It pulses, not like a heartbeat, more like a breath. That's when cutely tells you the old story, that once, during a long season of warmth, a garden grew so fast it swallowed a houseboat, that by morning it was impossible to tell where the boat ended and the garden began. The family just kept living there, harvesting squash from their roof. You laugh, but he doesn't. Historians would probably dismiss it as a myth or an exaggeration. But here, with the vines moving like curious fingers in the dark, you're not so sure. You return to the middle of the chinampa, lay flat on your back. Above you, stars blink in and out behind soft clouds. Around you, the garden shifts in size. You hear a soft creak as a trellis leans further than it did an hour ago. Everything's changing, growing. You've never felt this kind of quiet. Not stillness, not absence, but alive, quiet. You realize something as you lay there. These vines aren't trying to take over. They're just looking, reaching. They grow because they're meant to, because the soil is rich, and the air is warm, and the night is full of possibility. And maybe, just maybe, that's the same reason you do anything. You stand to stretch and notice that a vine has wrapped gently around your sandal. You reach down, unwind it, whisper an apology. You fall asleep again beside the tomato patch. When you wake in the morning, the canoe is back to normal. The vines have retreated, curled up like tired cats, already turning their faces toward the sun. You ask cutely if you imagined it. He smiles. Maybe, or maybe you're just part of the garden now. Tomorrow, there will be warriors. Not the ones you think. But for now, close your eyes. Let the vines curl round your dreams. They're just checking in. Ask ChatGPT. You wake to drums. Not war drums at least. Not yet, but steady. soft thuds echoing through the mist like a heartbeat amplified through the trees. Thump, thump, then silence, then again thump, thump, louder now, closer. You sit up slowly, the mat beneath you still damp with dew. The air smells of ash and chilies. There's something electric in the wind. You stand, brush off a few dry bean leaves, and peer through the maze of stalks. That's when you see them, warriors, dozens of them, shirtless and painted, stepping in formation along the chinampa edges, their sandals slapping against the mud with rhythmic force, their chests gleam with oil and sweat, their arms thick with muscle, obsidian-bladed clubs strapped across their backs, and perhaps most absurdly, each one is carrying a basket of tomatoes. You blink. No, you're not hallucinating. These are garden guards, real Aztec warriors assigned to protect the floating farms from theft, sabotage, and animal raids. You catch up to them, stumbling slightly as your foot sinks into a fresh compost heap. One of the warriors gives you a sideways glance, then tosses you a fruit. It's a gitameta, bright red ancestor of the modern tomato, still striped with yellow and firm in your palm. You bite into it, it's warm from the sun, sweet and tart, and you immediately forget how confused you are. Clitley joins you without a word. His expression is half proud, half annoyed. He watches the procession with the casual disinterest of someone who's seen better parades. They always do this near harvest, he says. You frown. Do what? Flex. He's not wrong. The warriors pause at each chinampa, inspecting the rows of produce like generals reviewing troops. One squats beside a squash blossom and nods approvingly. Another waves off a duck waddling too close to the maze. A third sharpens his mature whittle, that fearsome wooden sword embedded with obsidian blades, while standing next to a basket of beans. You're not sure if it's threatening or just a weird flex. Either way, no one messes with the food. You and cutely follow them toward the edge of the lake, where a small outpost, little more than a reed hut with a flag of maize leaves, serves as a checkpoint. From here, the produce gets loaded onto canoes and sent into the heart of Tenochtitlan. That's the real treasure, not gold, not jade. Crops. Because in the Aztec Empire, a good harvest was as valuable as a fortress, and in times of war, protecting the chinampas was a matter of survival. You watch as the warriors board their canoes, each one loaded with crates of peppers, squash, maize, and flowers. A few of them take up paddles. The rest stand watch, eyes scanning the water like hawks. Did they really need weapons? You ask cutely. He doesn't answer. Instead, he leads you down a narrow path behind one of the older chinampas. The earth here is firmer, the willow trees taller. You pass a half-buried stone marker, its glyphs, worn by wind and time, and come to a patch of disturbed soil. This one, he says, pointing, was raided 6 years ago. You look closer. The plants have regrown, yes, but slower, paler. There's a feeling here, not quite emptiness, but something quieter, like the garden remembers. Someone stole from it, cutely nods, tore up the rows, took the good soil, left it naked. You don't know what to say. Stealing from a garden doesn't sound like a crime worthy of warriors, until you realize it is, because this isn't just dirt. These chinampas feed people. They're the silent backbone of the city, producing more food per square foot than almost any other system in the world. And they're fragile. That's why the guards matter. And not just for outsiders. Sometimes the threat came from within rival families, jealous neighbors, even desperate citizens during bad harvest years. So, they patrol, not all the time, but often enough to send a message, cutely gestures for you to follow again. You return to the center of the chinampa, where the maize stands tall and proud. He points to one plant. It's been tied with a red ribbon. That one was touched by a soldier, he says. You lean in. The leaves tremble in the breeze. The soil around it has been carefully piled, ringed with polished stones. What does it mean? He shrugs. Some say it'll grow twice as strong. You stare at the plant a moment longer, wondering if it knows how famous it is now. The sun climbs higher. The warriors have moved on. Their boats are distant specks now, swallowed by reeds and mist. You and cutely return to work, weeding, watering, laughing softly at a duck who's absolutely not intimidated by your sandal dash waving. And later, as the sky blushes with orange, he tells you the secret. The real war isn't over land or gold, it's over food. You look down at your hands, dirt under your nails, sweat on your brow, a tiny tomato seed stuck to your palm. You understand. The chinampa breathes, the soil settles, and tonight, you'll sleep knowing the garden is guarded. Tomorrow, you'll climb stone walls, but not to escape, to grow something entirely new. For now, sleep. The warriors are watching, and the tomatoes approve. You wake somewhere high, not spiritually, literally. You blink against the sharp morning sun and realize your chinampa is gone. Well, not gone exactly, but it's way down there. You're not floating anymore. You're standing stone, warm, flat, carved stone, humming faintly under your feet, like it remembers being more important than it currently is. The sky feels closer here, the air thinner. The garden smells are replaced with something sharper, dust, incense, and roasted corn. You turn and see a wall of plants. Pumpkin vines hanging from a ledge, chia growing in clay pots, mesias, up here sprouting defiantly from the gaps between bricks, and dangling above it all, like strange green chandeliers, bottle gourds swaying from poles strapped to the roof. Welcome to the garden that grew on stone. You didn't climb here, not really. You wandered, dreamed your way upward. But now you're in the heart of the city, Tenochtitlan, and its gardens don't stop at the lake. They rise, because when the Aztecs ran out of land, they always ran out of land and just grew things on top of things. Temples, palaces, houses, walkways, storage huts, guard towers. If there was a flat surface, someone tried to plant something on it, and often succeeded. You walk past a row of clay amphorae lined along a rooftop edge. Inside each one, a tomato vine spirals upward around a willow branch. At the base of the pot, a single, fat frog, sitting in the moist soil like it's doing performance art. Below you, the city pulses. Canoes streak between the islands. Market songs rise. A priest sings something slow and mournful toward the sun. And up here, silence. You duck beneath a low beam supporting a trellis of beans. They're flowering, little white blossoms that look like spilled teeth. Behind them, a man is watering a patch of soil spread over a tiled roof. He uses a gourd bowl. His tunic is patched. His feet are calloused. But he hums while he works, and the plants lean toward his voice like they recognize him. You sit quietly, not wanting to interrupt. Eventually, he speaks without turning. Land is borrowed, but sky is free. You nod, as if you've always known that. He gestures toward a narrow staircase spiraling up the side of a temple wall. You climb. At the top is a small shrine empty, but for a row of carefully arranged clay pots. Each one holds a different herb. Epazote, cilantro, tilepiquin, hoja santa. Their leaves tremble in the breeze, sending up little bursts of scent-sweet, sharp, peppery. This is no accident. These aren't just rooftop veggies. These are medicinal terraces. Tiny apothecaries maintained by priest healers, students, midwives. You touch a leaf, it sticks briefly to your finger. You remember cutely mentioning this place, once the garden above the thunder. You thought he was being poetic. Nope, just literal. Historians still debate whether rooftop gardens were common or rare, whether they were for the wealthy or just the very clever. Some argue that growing food above ground was inefficient. Others say it was a necessity. Either way, here it is, a green ribbon winding its way around sacred stone. You lie back on the smooth surface of the temple. The stone is warm against your spine. Overhead, bean tendrils reach skyward, not out of desperation but confidence. Below, the city buzzes, but up here, you're in another world. You realize, now that the Aztecs didn't just conquer space, they redefined it. They turned every surface into a possibility, every flat roof into a microfarm, every stone ledge into a trellis. The same ingenuity that built chinampas across the lake built gardens across the skyline. Somewhere nearby, a child is singing. You can't see them, but the voice carries, sweet high, the same melody you heard once, sung by a woman in the market. While she packed flower bundles, the plants seemed to lean toward it. You close your eyes and feel the sun press gently against your face. You're not floating, but you don't feel heavy. Up here, weight shifts, the stone breathes, the plants climb, and somehow, you're part of the pattern. Tomorrow, the sky might change. Tomorrow, horses might arrive, and strangers might step ashore, but not tonight. Tonight, you sleep on a roof that blooms. Tonight, the garden is in the sky. Let the vines hold your dreams in place, and let the wind hum you to sleep. Ask Chachi. You wake to hooves, not the soft, clopping rhythm of pack animals you've heard in the markets. These are different. harder, heavier, urgent. The sound echoes across stone, through canals, and into your bones. You sit up fast, blinking against sharp daylight. The rooftop garden is still there, plants swaying, flowers blooming, but the air is wrong. The breeze is dry, hot, restless. Then you smell it. Smoke. Somewhere nearby, something is burning. You scramble to the edge of the rooftop, just in time to see them. Not many, maybe 20, maybe fewer, but they glow like heat mirages in metal and leather, their horses snorting and pawing at the canal edges like they are disgusted by everything. They are conquistadors, and they have arrived. Your first instinct is to duck, to hide behind the trellis, but no one else does. Instead, down below, people gather, some in confusion, some in awe, a few in fear. The warriors you saw before are, there are 2 less flowers now, more obsidian clubs. Cutely appears beside you. He's calm, too calm. He watches the strangers with eyes that don't blink. They've come early, he mutters. We thought we had more time. You don't know what to say. You're not supposed to be here for this. You're supposed to be learning about floating gardens, not watching them unravel. You turn your eyes back to the chinampas, and already, you can see it. Boats cut off. Canals blocked by debris. Some of the vines burned back, blackened from torches. Warriors standing guard over crates of maize like they're defending treasure, which, in truth, they are. The conquistadors aren't here for soil, or flowers, or stories. They're here for control. And the chinampas, they confuse them. Too wet, too green, too quiet. They don't understand that these gardens are the city's heart, not the temples, not the gold, so they trample. A horse steps onto a garden bed. It sinks slightly. The beast panics, rears up, kicks loose a basket of squash. A soldier laughs. Another drives a spear into the mud, just to see if it'll stand. It doesn't, but the damage does. Cutely growls something low and bitter in Nahuatl. You look at him. What do we do? He just shakes his head. There is no defense for something they don't think is worth stealing. And it's true. The invaders don't see the value. They burn because it's easier than asking. They flood because it clears space. They dismantle the canal system because they want roads, wheels, wagons, and stone doesn't float. You climb down to the nearest dock, wade through knee-high water, slick with ash and fallen petals. A child stands nearby holding a broken paddle. His canoe is half sunk, its cargo of herbs spilling into the canal like spilled ink. You help him push it to the bank. It's not enough. You reach cutely again at the edge of the garden. He's pulling up stakes, literally yanking willows from the corners, unweaving the edge matting. He tosses a bundle of cornstalks into the canoe. He's not giving up. He's preserving. You're moving it. You ask, he nods. They don't get to erase it. That's when you understand. The chinampa isn't just the soil. It's the method, the memory, the recipe for how to build again anywhere, anytime, from almost nothing. Cutely and others begin breaking down parts of the garden, folding it into boats, floating pieces deeper into the lake. Hidden spots, secret corners, places even maps forget. The Spaniards might conquer the temples. They might tear down pyramids and build cathedrals with their stones. But the gardens, they'll slip away, sink for a while, but not disappear. You stay with Cutely all day. You help carry seeds wrapped in corn husks, jars of dried herbs, bundles of rope made from agave fiber. As the sun sinks low, the city glows with smoke and dust. But beneath it, the chinampas move. You ride in a small canoe into the reeds, where a half-submerged garden still waits. It's older, rougher, but ready. Cutely gestures for you to jump in. You do. The garden holds. And in that moment, you feel something shift. The story's tone changes. A note of mourning enters the hum, but so does defiance. The kind that grows roots under watchful eyes and waits. Tonight, you'll sleep surrounded by salvaged soil. Tomorrow, you'll listen for the whispers, because history forgets. But gardens, remember, and they're very patient. Ask ChatGPT. You wake to whispers, not voices. Not exactly, just sounds, small ones. Wind brushing reeds, water lapping gently against a hollow log. The rustle of stalks, as someone moves through them, slow and unseen. You're not in the city anymore. You're somewhere else now, somewhere deeper. You sit up in your little canoe. The night presses close, thick with fog. The air smells of wet wood and old stone. Above you, willows form a weeping canopy. Their long leaves dangle like forgotten stories. Welcome to Texcoco, not the tourist version, not the color-splashed party boats with mariachi bands and beer coolers. This is the original, hidden in the veins of the ancient lake bed, what's left of the old chinampas, tucked away in slivers of canal. No one maps anymore. Cutely is gone. He didn't say goodbye, just left a folded mat beside your head, a half-eaten tamale and a single marigold tucked into your sandal. Maybe that was the goodbye. You drift, not by choice. The canoe has no paddle, no anchor. It simply moves, pulled by some slow current you can't see. And around you, the chinampas breathe. Yes, they're still here, not as neat, not as many, but surviving. You float past half-drowned plots of maize, trellises tangled with wild vines, bundles of herbs growing in places no hands have touched in years. One garden has merged with a patch of forest willows growing straight out of its beds, their roots anchoring it to memory. Another has been taken by birds. You see herons, standing in rows like quiet guards. One opens its wings and lifts into the mist, so slow and smooth you wonder if it's dreaming. You drift past a tiny shrine, just a stone really, carved with spirals, marigold petals scattered at its base. Someone was here recently. You're not alone. And not just in the tourist somewhere out there. Sense you feel it. The chinampas still remember you. The gardens you touched. The vines you untangled. The mud under your nails. They remember cutely. His quiet footsteps. His muttered jokes. His reed roof and crooked fence. They remember all of it. You lean over the side of the canoe, and for a second you see something impossible. Faces. In the water. Not reflections, just glimpses. A woman whispering to her crops. A child running between rows, a priest lighting incense beside a squash blossom, cutely, much younger, laughing as he hauls a basket of beans onto his back. The memories aren't dead, they're rooted. The chinampas don't need walls or ink. They remember with soil and smell and rhythm, with reed, mat and willow stake, with flower and ash. Historians argue how much of the old system survived. Some say it was lost after the conquest, drowned in canals redirected for roads and real estate. Others say Texcoco endures, quiet, unassuming, not out of nostalgia, but because it works. You believe the second group because you're here, and it's still moving. You pass a man in a canoe. He nods. His boat is loaded with herbs and pumpkins. No tourists, no guides, just quiet work. He doesn't ask why you're here, doesn't look surprised. You ask if this place is real. He points to the garden beside you. A tomato plant has grown through the hull of a sunken canoe, twisting upward toward the stars. What more proof do you need? You nod, drift on. In the distance, music, faint, not a celebration, something older. A bone flute, a shell horn, a voice singing in a language that doesn't need translation. You listen, you finally understand. This isn't a ruin, it's not an exhibit, it's a living memory, and the garden never stopped whispering. You just had to get quiet enough to hear it. You rest your head on the edge of the boat, your eyes close. Tomorrow, the journey ends, but not the garden. The garden is forever. You wake to stillness, not silence. There's always the soft gurgle of water, the distant flap of wings, the creak of reeds bending under their own memories, but stillness. No current. No wind. The canoe has stopped. You sit up slowly. The fog is thinner this morning, almost elegant, like silk draped across the lake. Shafts of light pierce it here and there, revealing slivers of color, yellow petals floating on water, bright green cheer leaves bobbing beside your boat, a single white lily standing perfectly upright at the tip of a forgotten chinampa. You're at the edge now, not of the lake, not of the world, but the edge of the story. The gardens are fewer here, broken, some half-sunk, others swallowed by trees. You drift past one with rows still intact, but no one's touched it in years. Morning glories have claimed it completely, their blue faces turned upward, drinking in sun and solitude. You step out of the canoe onto a narrow bank of packed mud. It holds you. You walk. The chinampas are quieter now. No more farmers. No kitili, just whispers in the trees and the ghost of canoes long gone. But under your feet, the earth is warm. You kneel, dig your fingers into the soil. It's still rich, still black, still ready, and they're sprouting right. Beside your hand is a new shoot, delicate, green, reaching upward. No one planted it. Or maybe someone did, years ago. Or maybe the garden simply refused to stop, because that's what gardens do. You look up and around. The lake is shining now, clouds moving like slow dancers across the sky. The chinampas are reflecting back not in mirrors, but in echoes. You remember it all now. The mud, hauled basket by basket, layered and shaped into floating beds. The reeds woven and staked, anchoring memory to water. The flowers blooming for markets, for offerings, for ghosts. The warriors, standing among the tomatoes, guarding nourishment like it was gold. The rain dancers, the rooftop gardens, the fish that cleaned the canals and fed the people. The conquistadors, whose horses couldn't understand the magic beneath their hooves. The songs, whispered in the night, by Cutely and others like him, keepers of green truth, in a world obsessed with stone. You feel it now. It wasn't about the chinampas, it never really was. It was about persistence, about coaxing life from the unlikeliest places, from shallow lakes and conquered cities, from rooftops and rotting boats, from cracked mud and whispered prayers. You stand. A soft wind stirs the willow branches above you. The garden hears, and you know it's not gone, maybe never was. Pieces of it live in backyard planters, in community gardens, in permaculture projects and rewilding zones, in the hands of every child who tucks a seed into dirt and waits. The chinampa is not just Mexico. It's everywhere. A floating idea passed down in soil and breath. You walk to the edge of the bed, the water glimmers, a single frog sings, and then you say thank you, not loud, not formal, just enough for the mud to notice. Then you return to the canoe. It drifts again, slowly, back through the fog. The gardens don't wave goodbye. They don't need to. They know you'll remember, and they know you'll come back, if not in person, then in spirit. In the way you watch plants grow, in the way you listen to silence, in the way you now understand that some of the strongest things ever built were never meant to last forever. They were meant to float. The fog thickens, the water hushes, and the chinampas fade behind you. You lie back in the boat, the wood warm from the sun, and let your eyes close one last time. A leaf lands on your chest, a flower turns to follow the light, and somewhere far away, Cutely smiles. Let go now. Let the garden rock you gently. Let the wind carry the song. Let the memory root itself deep in your dreaming.